Welcome back, friends. In this video, we look at an enhancement of the knife game, which is a part of our intermediate curriculum. The specific enhancement that we look at is this animation that we create on the falling knife. So, what I mean by that is, it will be best illustrated if I just demonstrate to you. Here is a copy of the class game, what we do in the class. So, what happens here, notice is that when I, let's say hit the throwing knife onto the fixed knife, I lose a life, but beyond that, the knife basically disappears, right? So yes, I do lose a life, but there's not much animation that goes on here, right? Contrast this, for example, with the enhanced game, right? So in the enhanced game, what I've also shared with you here, if I do the same thing, so I'm going to hit the knife deliberately. Notice the throwing knife sort of comes down, okay, so this time I didn't hit, but it kind of comes down with an animation, right? So it looks like it hit and it fell down rapidly, right? We can try once again. And this time, of course, the game got over because lives are also getting reduced, but we can just see it once again, right? So this is what I mean by a falling knife animation, right? Now, this is quite interesting because it also involves some concept which we cover, in fact, in more detail in our advanced lessons. But I thought it's good for, in case you want to try this as a bonus, then it kind of gives you a head up for, let's say, what's coming up in the advanced sessions, right? So the main challenge here, right, is that when I have a knife which is being thrown, in fact, all those knives that are being thrown up are clones from the same sprite, right? So what that means is that this, if, for example, this session, maybe we already have a knife up here which is embedded onto the log. We want to do something to this clone which is going and hitting the fixed knife. For example, let's say the dark blue is fixed knife. So I want to make sure that animation happens on this clone, but there is no animation whatsoever on this clone. Right now, whenever it comes to this, where we want a unique behavior, a different behavior for every clone, right? Remember, they are clones, so we just have when I start as a clone, all of them start doing the same thing, right? But whenever we want a unique behavior on a clone, the way to do that in sprite is to use variables for this sprite only, right? And in fact, like I said, we'll cover this in more detail when it comes to games like Snake, Tux of Math, and so on. But we are going to use the same idea over here, right? So let's see how we can implement this in code. So I've, like I said, I've copied, I've made a copy of the class game so that we can, just modify that. Notice this game doesn't have any animation right now. So I lose a life, but there's no animation, right? So we're going to build that animation. Like I said, the first thing that I'm going to need is the fact that I need a variable only for this sprite, right? So I'm going to create that variable, and this variable will be only for this sprite. I'll just call it, say, fallen. Right now, by what I mean by fallen is that has this particular clone gone and hit another knife and hence needs to be animated, right? Now, important here, very, very important here, in fact, is to say that this variable should be for this sprite only, right? If you don't do this, then this entire scheme will break apart. So I'll say for this sprite only. And now I know immediately it's for this sprite because notice it says knife throwing hyphen fallen. So whenever I have this sprite name hyphen the variable name, then we know that it's only for this particular sprite. That's like the simplest and the strongest test here, right? Otherwise can be quite prone to errors, right? Now, what I do is that when I create a clone, right? So before I create a clone, I just set this fallen to say 0, which means initially the knife clone gets created without this fallen being set. However, once the knife clone, when I start as a clone, so notice this is the condition which checks for knife touching another knife. So here I go and set fallen to, so I change the lives by -1 and also I set fallen to 1, right? Which means that for that specific clone which went and touched the knife, this particular variable has become 1, right? And what I will do is that I want to animate the fall. So I'm going to just use a broadcast and wait here because I want the falling to complete before anything else happens. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to say broadcast a message called animate fall and wait. And in fact, this part I can do as part of that broadcast only, right? So I'm going to say animate fall and wait, and this start sound we can do there. Now, what happens in that animate fall, right? It's actually quite straightforward in a way, provided the thing is nicely set up. So I'm going to say, okay, look, when I receive animate fall, now this is a broadcast. It goes to all the sprites in there, right? So every sprite receives this, but only the sprite which has been detected as fallen, right? So I'm going to put a condition here. If fallen is equal to 1, right? Now remember, fallen is variable only for the sprite, which means every clone is also maintaining its own copy. So I'm going to say if fallen is equal to 1. Now this is the one that I want to animate, and well, I'll put a simple animation here. I just do not want this knife to keep going upwards because that may cause confusion here. I want to quickly bring this down and sort of like, in this trajectory, right? So one animation that seems to work here is, and you can of course be a little bit more creative here if you want to. So I'll just say, okay, repeat say 5 times. uh, change y rapidly downwards. So I'll say change y by, let's say, minus 40. Again, minus 40 is just a number, right? So I'll say change y by, okay, here, minus 40, so that comes down rapidly. And at the same time, I'm going to say turn, let's say, by turn anti-clockwise, say by 15 degrees. Right now, this is again, there's no compulsion that you must do exactly this, but the point here is that for a specific clone, we are going to do some kind of tumbling behavior, and then at the end of this, I can say start sound pluck, right? Because which is what the sound being played earlier, right? So now we can see this in action. See, if I go and deliberately hit this, notice I get this kind of effect where, so this time I could not hit this. Live got reduced, but not only that, I did see that animation happening. So let's see it once again. If I did this, notice I get this knife falling down. It looks pretty cool right now. Right now the condition is only hitting this knife, but in case you want to put a shield or something, a similar thing can be done. In fact, for the clone, we can set fallen to 1, and then we can use the same broadcast here to cause the effect, right? To cause exactly this effect. Right now, at this point, I do want to highlight one thing, that if you were to miss this point, that the variable is only for this sprite, or let's say in this broadcast you forget to add this condition, if fallen is equal to 1. Right now, basically, remember, broadcast is going to go to every clone, just like every clone is getting deleted here. Here every clone is starting to do this, which means that funny things will happen. For instance, you are doing this now. Let's say I go in, so there's one knife already there. If I did this, let's say, notice both the knives fell down, because both the knives got eliminated, and some real weird things start to happen, right? So avoid all of this. I am saying that only for the clone where fallen has got set to 1, do all this, right? And with this, notice what happens is pretty neat, pretty cool. So if I did this, right, it gets, so I can actually try this again. I put one knife here, only one, that particular clone got eliminated, right? I hope this gave you an idea. Like I said, this is a concept we'll learn in more detail in Snake and so on. But if you try that here today, it will set you up for pretty, it'll basically give you a good foundation for the advanced level as well. Yeah. So take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.